Hello, class. Today we are covering what we should have covered in class, but the molecules, as Emily would say, messed everything up. In our update, the screen froze, and wow, what a mess. So, anyway, I want to talk to you guys what we were talking about today, which is talk to you about the Cold War tensions that are cooling down a little bit in the 70s. And it kind of starts in the late 60s, but you know, we'll call it a 70s thing because that's really what we'll attribute it to. And when we kind of last checked and we looked a little bit like very little bit at the Cuban Missile Crisis. Apologies, but after the Cuban Missile Crisis, both parties were they were on edge. They realized we were just on the brink of nuclear warfare. There's a blockade, which is an act of war. There were nuclear warheads that were talked about being lobbed, preemptive strikes. What Kennedy and Khrushchev even did was they put a telephone machine that literally, pick up and you can talk to the Secretary General of the Soviet Union at a moment's notice, and vice versa to the President of the United States. So because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think people realize that we're playing with fire, and this guy running here is playing with fire. And so the equalization of power with the United States and the sort of end of Stalin and Khrushchev signaled a time when authoritarian extremism could be relaxed. Like this frog, things could be relaxed a little bit. And so what you see is a period where the Soviet Union is able to, I don't know, hopefully feel good about itself a little bit, and and at least try to enjoy some of the comforts of the West, even though it didn't really happen. So what we want to start with is the Prague Spring of 1968, and it starts with a guy named Antonin Novotny. Antonin Novotny was the appointed leader by Stalin of Czechoslovakia. He was a Stalinist communist, and in Czechoslovakia, we're talking about an area really close to the West. Obviously, they're right on the border with Austria and West Germany, and they're the former part of the former Holy Roman Empire, and they had a rebellion in the 60s, but it wasn't really a rebellion of like arms. It was a writers' rebellion led by this guy named Václav Havel, and Václav Havel will eventually become the leader of Czechoslovakia after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and he was a playwright. So you guys that think that actors and I don't know, people that write and stuff can't do anything. Václav Havel, there you go. And he kind of led this writers' rebellion that was a critical look at Novotny and of communism, and they kind of forced Novotny's hand in terms of public opinion, and he resigned. And the person that became the next leader of Czechoslovakia was Alexander Dubček, and this is him. What a very nice looking fellow, happy, rose in his lapel. And Dubček wanted to introduce communism with a human face. It probably looked something like this human face. So it was communism that at least tried to be nice. The thing about it is this didn't last very long. It created a reformist euphoria called the Prague Spring, but for the most part, this Prague Spring was short-lived. Why? Well, I'm sure you can guess why. Because the Soviets just rolled the tanks in. They said no, yet. They put a dude named Gustav Husak in as the leader, and the Prague Spring was over. A little trivia for you guys. I don't know. I think we only have one hockey guy. Evan Mills is a hockey guy. Evan Jaromir Jagr was from the Czech Republic, and he wore number 68. I'll bet you can guess why now, and he wore that because of the Prague Spring. So this trend seemed to be the norm among Eastern Bloc nations in terms of this brutal repression of dissent, of democracy, of free speech, and things like that. And particularly when we look at places like East Germany and Romania, where they were brutally repressive. In East Germany, I think that the number is like, for every citizen, there was for every 165 citizens, excuse me, there was one Stasi member. The Stasi being the secret police of the East German government. So can you imagine that for every 165 people, there's one secret police officer? In Romania, the Romanians were led by these Stalinists, these really cruel people named the Ceausescus, and eventually they were so repressive that the Romanians got their revenge, and they killed both Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife in a very brutal way when the Berlin Wall fell. But when we kind of look east, we want to look at U.S. relations with China. You guys talked about that, or looked it up, and of course it starts with Richard Nixon. Now Nixon is an interesting character because we only understand Nixon for the bad things, Watergate, the cover up, the phone recordings, and the kind of criminality, and he was kind of a jerk face, ninny muggin for that, but what Richard Nixon was a pretty good statesman, and relations with China, it really highlights that. He was a vocal Cold Warrior, and he wanted to reduce tensions with Mao and China. You could say he might have been a visionary because our markets in China, it would be tough to argue what has done for the world, for economic prosperity throughout the world. And Nixon visited China, and it was a diplomatic coup, I guess you could say, that it was hailed as a resounding success throughout the world. Here's him on the Great Wall. Makes me kind of want to go see the Great Wall. It looks really kind of cool, actually. And so he was responsible for probably what we would say is huge economic impacts even today. Those deals that were made between Nixon and Mao to sort of relax tensions had far-reaching effects for creating the China that we know today, the China that we can deal with in a business way today. And of course, they are trading adversaries, but I think it's not an unhealthy, like a adversarial relationship. We still have businesses over there. We still do business with China. So there you go. In the 70s, we entered a real relaxation of tensions because of Nixon, and particularly when we think of the Soviets, we went into this detente. And this was, I guess we could understand this when we look at the anti-ballistic missile treaties that were signed. Now, what an anti-ballistic missile basically is a rocket that shoots down another rocket. And so here's why, and Noah kind of in class today kind of wondered what's the big deal. Well, a ballistic missile is a rocket, of course, and you can put a nuclear warhead on it, and it becomes a very dangerous rocket. And so if you have an anti-ballistic missile, that rocket will shoot down the other rocket. And so those countries that have very sophisticated anti-ballistic missile technology could potentially tilt the balance of power between the Soviets and the United States, and you create a bad situation if you're the country that doesn't have the ABMs. Well, guess who has better ABM technology? Yay! Where's my flag? I'm going to wave it. It's the Americans, and our anti-ballistic missile technology was becoming better and better, so that we were almost going to be able to shoot rockets out of the sky. And I think hopefully now we have that technology, that capability in some ways. And so detente and the idea that we could sign treaties to limit anti-ballistic missiles was a good start to that. In 1975, the world's leaders, including all of Europe and the superpowers, met in Helsinki, Finland. And this was kind of another sign of the detente, because they agreed that the borders established after World War II that you see here were basically legitimate, which recognizes the Soviet sphere of influence over Eastern Europe. So there was no disputing that this is East Germany, that Czechoslovakia should be, I guess, a communist nation, that Poland is going to be that big, and there you go. Um, so there you go, détente, yay détente. Um, However, what the Helsinki Accords did is they asked the signers to protect human rights of their own citizens, a sticking point for the hopes of détente. Because here's the problem: we don't have a lot of trouble recognizing human rights. We like to say we push for human rights, even though, of course, we're the United States. We're not perfect. But it's easier for democracies in the world, for the West, to recognize human rights, because we allow freedom of speech. That's a huge, huge thing when we think of human rights: is freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to say and speak your conscience is a huge human right, because we don't put people in jail for what they say. Um, However, the Soviets did, and that became a problem. It also became a problem when the Soviets then marched troops into Afghanistan for their own version of our Vietnam War. They tried to add Afghanistan as another um, Soviet republic, and it really ratcheted up tensions because we thought, hey, you're not respecting people's human rights. And the Taliban, we armed the Taliban. This was kind of one of the crazy parts of the Afghanistan war with the Soviets, is we armed the Taliban, and eventually we're going to have to go back and fight those people, and we still have yet to pull out of Afghanistan as of this date right now, which is April 27, 2021. So we're supposed to pull out later, but again, these effects of some of these things have far-reaching consequences into the future. Okay, and because of the ratcheting up of these tensions, a new day is about to dawn, and it'll be the 1980s. Here's President Reagan and Gorbachev, and it's going to bring a new detente. I'm sorry, not a new detente, a new ratcheting up of tensions that will then quickly melt away with the falling of the Berlin Wall. Okay, and that's what we'll cover later. So thanks again for sticking with me. Thanks for watching this if you did. And I hope that you are having a great day today on Wednesday. You guys take care. Cheers.